Nintendo's Wii had a reputation for being a family-friendly console, and as such, many popular games for the system had low age ratings that ensured that pretty much anybody could pick up a Wii remote and start playing some games. However, the system did have some mature-rated games, and one of them in particular is truly unlike anything else that I've ever seen.
Let's move, we bounce, roll, rock, groove, do what the fuck we want to. Ain't no rules, we acting a fool, now grind to the beat, motherfucker, let's move. Hey yo, listen, it's a bang bang, I ain't playing bang bang, still killing with the flame, got it pass, lock. People on my block, banging when they rollin', cause they know that shit is rock. And bodies drop, yeah, that shit is so official. We get it hot, killing it is not an issue. I got a problem with you, yeah, I hear that shit a lot. Till I start to breathe on a minute, screaming stop. They try and ride with me, but they all falling off. Nobody can stop me, hit them like a Molotov. I pull back and explode on the beat, then I watch them hit the ground and explode on the street. We bounce, roll, rock.
Madworld, the very first title by PlatinumGames, is a hardcore action game with killer qualities, and I wanted to break the game's elements down to figure out why I, and so many others around the world, love this game. I'll be providing extensive coverage of the story, gameplay, development, audio, and reception of Madworld, and as a world exclusive, I managed to get in contact with Sick YG, one of the underground hip-hop artists who feature on Madworld's soundtrack. I interviewed him about his work on the game to try and showcase his unique perspective on Madworld, and to find out how he, as a virtually unknown rapper from America, managed to find himself as part of the soundtrack to a Japanese video game. Trust me, when I say extensive coverage, I truly mean it. With all that being said, I hope you enjoy an extensive breakdown of Madworld.
Let the games begin.
My fellow citizens, first, I assure you that all necessary measures are being taken. I have personally authorized a special...
Madworld may seem like a goofy, wacky action game at first, with its over-the-top violence and spectacle, but there lies some thought-provoking themes and interesting narrative threads throughout. I'll try to cover every single cutscene in detail, providing a rundown of the game's narrative in full. Madworld's main theme is violence as entertainment, and as I don't want to be an armchair philosopher on YouTube, I challenge you yourself to think about the narrative and see the contradictions about violence the game puts forward. Madworld was penned by Yasumi Matsuno, director and writer of classics like Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story. The game provided two conflicting goals for Matsuno.
First of all, the lead character Jack had to be truly cruel. He couldn't show any ambivalence about what he does. But at the same time, I couldn't in good conscience endorse violence. I had to denounce it. I struggled for quite a while over how to reconcile these goals. After a lot of puzzling, I had an idea. Why not make this contradiction itself part of the setting? That's how I came up with the idea of a typical city, suddenly overtaken and transformed into a staging ground for a brutal contest where violence is the only way to survive. In other words, Jack's actions are common sense in the cruel world of Deathwatch, but the existence of Deathwatch itself serves as an indictment of violence. I tried to build a thought-provoking setting where violence and non-violence, lies, and the truth intersect.
The game begins with a long shot of a populated city, and comic book-like panels and camera pans are used to show us the destruction contained within. It's then revealed that Jefferson Island, the setting of the game, has been cut off from the outside world completely. No one gets in, no one gets out.
As you can see, all 8 bridges to Jefferson Island have been cut. There is no traffic getting on or off the island.
We are in hour 15 of the communications blackout with Jefferson Island, leaving the residents there effectively cut off from the outside world.
We then see a group of street gangs fighting amongst themselves with signs reading Shock TV and Deathwatch opens tonight. We then see this. This beast of a man is our protagonist, and after talking to an unknown figure in his earpiece, he stumbles across a deadly fighter who is just about to be sponsored.
Impressive. Most impressive. Your skills are sure to please my client. Well, anyone else here feel they deserve a sponsor?
Confident as ever, our lead introduces himself in one of the coolest scenes in the entire game.
Congratulations, contestant. My client will be delighted.
Hey, I could use a sponsor.
Who's there? Show yourself!
There is a signing bonus, right?
Of course. But I wouldn't spend your bonus just yet. He's already killed 2 dozen bigger than yourself.
Action heroes usually fight their enemy in a long battle fraught with struggle, but our lead just took that guy out in one punch. What's his name anyway? And who's the guy on the monitor?
You can call me 13, as I represent sponsor number 13. And your name? For contract purposes, of course.
Jack. Just Jack.
That's right, our protagonist is Jack, the mysterious fighter who enters Deathwatch, a game show where it's kill or be killed for unknown reasons. But he'll need a lot more than his fist to win Deathwatch, right? With that, Jack is placed in Central Station, the first level of the game.
Jefferson Island, just perfect weather for our unwilling contestants to compete in the Varigan City Deathwatch. My name is Howard Buckshot Holmes, and along with my co-commentator, Chris Creevy, I'll be giving you a slay-by-slay account of tonight's bloodbath.
After being taught the basics of Deathwatch combat by Agent 13 in the game's tutorial, he sees an interesting display of something to come.
Y'all know who I am. That's right, the Bishop of Blood and Carnage, the Black Baron.
This figure, as you could tell by his smooth sounds and sensual swagger, is the Black Baron, and the lovely lady accompanying him is his partner, Matilda.
Jeez, what's going on, baby? Yeah, can't you see? Hey, what you doing? I'm talking to the people. I'm breaking it down. God.
Together, they advertise bloodbath challenges, which are mini competitions of sorts that Deathwatch competitors can participate in to score more points. After taking part in this challenge, Jack makes it to the end of the area, and with this, we see...
Hell yeah, pimps and players! The Black Baron is here to learn y'all a little something in the methods of mayhem.
The Black Baron? Didn't he die before? Weird. Okay, I guess he died again.
No!
Anyway, after this, Jack runs into Little Eddie, the 178th ranked contestant on Deathwatch.
You know what I don't get? I don't get why they call him Little Eddie when he's so fucking big. I think it's supposed to be ironic. What? You know, the use of words to express something other than, and especially the opposite of, the literal meaning. Usually a humorous or sardonic literary style or form. You got beat up in school a lot, didn't you? Yes.
His rank doesn't matter, however, as Jack makes quick work of him. Jack then returns to town, takes his earpiece out against the wishes of Agent 13, and does something a little bit suspicious before having a brief conversation about the seemingly infinite number of cameras placed around the city.
Jack, where did you go?
I had to take a piss. What, is no pissing in my contract?
Jack then makes it downtown, the second level of the game. After fighting through more unlucky contestants, he runs into the Black Baron again? How does he keep coming back? There has to be a reason for this. Jack then makes his way to the arena of Jude the Dude, the 124th ranked contestant. Jude doesn't last long, however, as he literally explodes at the sight of Jack. Red Line Highway is the setting of the third level, and this is the first motorbike level. Riding his motorbike down the side of a skyscraper in style, Jack then proceeds to run into, and dispatch, Herr Frederick von Twirlenkiller, the 98th ranked contestant.
Getting his ass kicked by Jack? Raise your hand. Oh wait, he can't raise his hand, can he? Air today, gone tomorrow. Fucking weak.
The next scene shows Jack walking alone through the dilapidated streets of Jefferson Island, communicating with the figure on the other end of the earpiece. No, not Agent 13, the other voice. Jack discusses how he is keeping 13 and the other Death Watchers in the dark, implying that he has an ulterior motive for participating in Death Watch. The voice then mentions an airborne virus in the sample that Jack sent.
Oh, Jack, we couldn't find any trace of airborne virus in the sample you sent.
That's what the flare from earlier was for. Interesting. Jack goes to inspect the body he finds on the ground and continues the conversation. We're then shown the identity of the voice.
Jack, staying out of the spotlight usually involves not running towards gunfire.
I know what I'm doing, Amala.
This is Amala, and she's the oracle to Jack's Batman, guiding him through Deathwatch remotely and listening in on his conversations with anyone that he comes across. Just from the sound alone, Jack determines what type of gun fired the bullet, and he knows that those guns aren't allowed in the Deathwatch games. With a new motive on his mind, Jack heads off to investigate, and this takes him to the second main area of the game, the aptly titled Asian Town. Described by Amala as a bad mashup between an amusement park and an ethnic stereotype, Asian Town is home to an unfortunate civilian defending himself from a violent gang who recognize that he's a doctor.
Stay back! I said stay back!
A civilian alive? This is a surprise.
You remember how many points a doc's worth?
Nah, but those bastards in private practice are worth big bucks.
Well, shit. He's public. That's a city hospital ID.
So, why do you get more for private docs?
'Cause those insurance-sucking fat wallet bottom feeders take your money. Who the fuck are you?
Just a firm believer in public health care.
With this, we officially enter Great Wall Street, the 4th level. After fighting his way through new kinds of enemies in a completely different location, Jack somehow runs into the Black Baron again. I'm not even going to question this anymore, to be honest. Eventually, Jack makes his way to the lair of Rin, the 94th ranked Deathwatch contestant.
Here comes Rin, the fantastic Kung Fu Queen. Kreese, didn't the two of you have a thing a while back?
If by thing you mean a 5-minute fight that left me spitting teeth and pissing blood, yeah, then we had a thing.
I'm going to enjoy every moment.
After a strenuous fight, Rin is eaten alive, literally. Jack then heads to the next area and is scolded by Agent 13 for letting the Doctor from before live. Jack then questions if he really needs a reason to kill someone.
So you want me to kill that kid?
I merely want to know why you did not kill him.
Why? Do I need a reason not to kill someone?
With that, Jack finds himself in Bistro La Lusty Geisha, the 5th level. After making his way up and down the countless floors of the bistro, Jack runs into Shogun Kikuchi Muso, the 71st ranked Deathwatch contestant.
Root for the view? If so, he'll find it a view to die for. Say goodbye, samurai! With no fucking head!
After an epic battle, Jack finds himself in Great Wall Street again, having a discussion with Agent 13. 13 describes that no matter what age we live in, humanity will always be obsessed with violence, and that we're no more civilized now than we were thousands of years ago. He reveals that the very first Deathwatch took place 2,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, and that they exist for
It's the same. The settlement of conflict for the minimum price in blood. That is why the games exist.
Agent 13 then describes that the world is controlled by gardeners, and the mass public are weeds who need to be cut for flowers to bloom. 13 then welcomes Jack back, hinting that this isn't Jack's first time on Deathwatch.
Talented man. It's good to know some things don't change.
Welcome back, Jack.
It's good to be home.
The 6th level of the game takes place in the Sumo Arena, where Jack faces Yokozuna, the 53rd ranked contestant.
Take your best shot, boy!
After sending him flying into a volcano, Jack then returns to Little Asian Town yet again, discovering a gun on the ground, prompting him to pick it up and inspect it. It's here where he runs to the doctor from before, who is clearly having a hard time in Deathwatch. The doctor introduces himself as Leo and that he's in his residency.
My name's Leo Falmont. I'm in my residency at Jefferson Central Hospital's ER, or I was, I guess.
Jack, after having learnt before from the flare that there's a deadly virus spreading around the island, forcefully questions Leo about his true identity.
They sprayed this whole damn place with a virus. If you're not a contestant, why didn't you get sick? Why the hell are you still alive?
In a flashback scene, Leo reveals to Jack, and by extension us the audience, the truth about Jefferson Island.
It all happened so fast. The island was cut off before we knew what was going on.
A seemingly normal night goes completely postal when a mysterious man appears on a giant screen in town to announce that the island has been cut off completely from the outside world.
We have cut off all road and rail access to and from Jefferson Island. No one enters, no one leaves.
He then introduces the concept of the Deathwatch game as a truck filled with armed gang members make their way forcefully into the city.
Those of you still wondering, this is a game of survival. Might makes right. It is the only law, and your only chance if you wish to live through this. To those who do survive, you will not only win the right to live, but a substantial financial reward to the tune of $100 million. To participate in this game, you need only pick up a weapon, a pipe, a bat, a knife, anything will do. Then you need to kill someone. Family members and neighbors are a convenient place to begin.
But come to think of it, why has anyone been participating in Deathwatch at all?
We've dispersed a biological agent, a virus, across Jefferson Island. Everyone infected, which is all of you, will die within 24 hours. If you care to live longer than 24 hours, all you need do is indicate your willingness to participate in our game. Kill anyone, and you will be given a vaccine. Oh, and I suggest you act quickly. The virus incubation period varies by person. Some may suffer adverse effects much sooner than others. Ah, a case in point.
Get back! He's hemorrhaging!
Game over.
We then return to Jack and Leo in the present, and when asked about how he's still alive, Leo reveals that he didn't kill anyone, but rather...
I stole it from someone who had.
You?
The virus got him before he was able to take it.
Your lucky day, isn't it?
Amala then lets Jack know Leo's history and that he can be trusted. Jack then reveals to Leo that he isn't part of a potential rescue squad with one of the coldest lines in the entire game.
Contestant, who are you? You with some kind of rescue squad? There's gonna be a rescue, right? Why haven't they sent anyone yet?
Because everyone's too busy running around with their heads up their asses to do anything. Sorry, but the cavalry ain't coming. Sorry, kid. I've got things to take care of. I don't help people. I kill them.
We are then given our first glimpse into the Deathwatch offices. The man from before appears on screen, and the Deathwatch worker reveals some useful information about Jack.
With the Guild under the Bureau's High Crimes Division. Graduated from Stanfield, joined the Marines. His squad saw some action, a few top-secret missions. The Lyceria Embassy hostage crisis in '92, the Albeda Airport takeover in '97. Earned himself 3 Silver Stars. Regular hero.
And good at making corpses, as we've seen. It all begins to make sense.
Later says he left the Marines and joined the Varigan City PD as a detective in the Homicide Division. Oh, this is interesting. You remember the kidnapping of the Minister of Transportation's daughter?
Yes, Palgostini, wasn't it? I seem to recall they paid the ransom and found the girl murdered.
It seems that Jack was in charge of the case at first, but got removed after a falling out with the department heads over strategy. According to the PD, Jack went rogue after that. They claimed his actions pushed the kidnappers into killing their hostage. He gets reprimanded, they even take him to court. He's found not guilty, but he still quits the department.
After which the chasers snatch him up. So who's he chasing? And what does it have to do with our games?
I'll have to crack the Bureau servers. Give me a moment.
Look for something high stakes. Something put up by a celebrity. Something that would interest a man like Jack.
There's over 30 bounties posted here. Which could it be?
There. Naomi Ann Boris, the mayor's daughter. She's on the island.
So, he's after the mayor's only child, huh?
With that being said, Jack enters the courtyard, the 7th level. After fighting his way through this horror movie-inspired locale, he uncovers the Shamans, a group of werewolf cannibals who are collectively ranked 49th on Death Watch. After giving the lead werewolf some motion sickness, Jack becomes the 49th ranked contestant.
My boss, don't you, lady?
After making his way into the next area, Jack speaks with Amala about his target, the person he's been chasing, Naomi, and how she's seemingly inside of Jefferson Island's castle. Things may seem like they're going to plan, but Jack is in for a rude awakening.
Hello, pimps, players, and pain purveyors. How's everybody doing out there? I don't give a fuck. Sorry to interrupt the mayhem, but there's a very special person I'd like to introduce to you all. That's right, motherfuckers. It's your motherfucker Jack Cayman in this bitch. This motherfucker is a bounty hunter with the chasers. During the day, he tracks down missing children and dangerous criminals for fun and profit. But when it comes time to chill, Jack just likes to smoke motherfuckers and kill cigars. But for all you motherfuckers that already know him, I guess I don't need to tell you that. 'Cause you're all dead. Oh, shit. Hell yeah, Jack is one tough cookie, ex-Marine special ops and expert in all forms of kicking that ass. In other words, just what we're looking for here at the Death Watch games.
Before the level begins, however, we're treated to another scene with the mysterious showrunner of Death Watch. He discusses with his underling how much money that they should place on Jack, indicating that this scene takes place before the Black Baron goes live with the announcement. In addition to having to fight flesh and metal to find Naomi, Jack now has $1 million bounty placed on his head.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime!
We're then introduced to the dungeon, the 8th level of the game. Jack makes his way through countless ghosts and ghouls before falling down a waterslide of death to meet Frank, the 36th ranked contestant.
Oh yeah! Frank! I remember you fighting this guy in the 07 games. He had his arm so far up your ass that you looked like an adorable hand puppet.
Yeah, well, they took the toughest chunks off a bunch of dead fighters and stitched them together to make this electric motherfucker. Yeah, he's dumb as a box full of blondes, but stronger than shit with a punch that'll zap the ass off you. Clumsy fucker, though. Jack can take him if he fights smart and fast.
Smash!
Frank feels a bit thirsty, however, so Jack decides to give him some juice. With that, Jack is one step closer to finding Naomi.
Look
We're then subjected to a scene of Jefferson Island's 1% who revel in the violence, celebrating the circumstances that the city is placed under.
All for you, Naomi. Your knight's going to need a fire hose to get that blood off his shining armor.
Jack finds himself in the Sanctuary, the 9th level of the game, where he meets Elise, the 18th ranked contestant of the Deathwatch games. After literally spanking Elise into submission, Jack enters the Den of Affluence, where he not only comes face to face with the featureless, mega wealthy citizens of Jefferson Island, but also the figure he's been chasing after, Naomi.
You Naomi? Your father sent me. I'm guessing you know why.
It's here that he makes a shocking revelation.
Yes, you're Jack, the Chaser. I can't thank you enough for coming to rescue me. Here, your reward.
I get it. You people are enjoying this. You weren't caught up in some crisis. This is all part of your opening ceremony.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Amala, have the mayor taken into custody.
Roger. No, Jack. My father has nothing to do with this.
Watching this scene unfold in real time from one of the many Deathwatch cameras is the man from before, who realizes that Jack somehow has communication to someone outside the island. But this isn't the most of his concerns, however. He explains that while they could kill Jack immediately and just get rid of him, he is the star of Deathwatch after all. So in order to squash Jack and foil his plans, they'll have to do it on camera and make it look like a legitimate kill from another contestant, while also not revealing Jack's current whereabouts to the people betting on Deathwatch. With this new plan in motion, this mysterious figure lures Jack into the next area. Jack then enters the Access Hangar, the game's 10th level. This is another motorbike level, and at the end of the course waits Kojak, the 10th ranked contestant. After an epic motorbike duel, our Jack reigns supreme and he makes his way forward. We then return to the Deathwatch man who reveals that due to not revealing Jack's location, some of Deathwatch's largest bidders are threatening to pull funding. They then find that Agent 13, or Lord Gesser, which is his true identity, was sponsoring Jack, but since Jack crushed the earpiece and went rogue, their contract together was declared null and void. This means that someone else is supporting Jack, but they don't know who. Jack finds himself in the maintenance facility, the 11th level of the game. Making his way through this sci-fi themed area, Jack then discovers the Masters, who hold the title of the 5th ranked contestant together as a duo. After Jack uses his power to blow them away, we're treated to yet another scene involving the Deathwatchers, where Lord Gesser reveals that the man in charge is named Noah. He then tells Noah to check Jack's DNA to figure out exactly who he is. Jack, however, has more pressing matters to attend to, as he now has to fight Martin, the 2nd ranked contestant in the games. Jack deletes System 32 on Martin's operating system, and he makes his way towards the truth yet again. Speaking of truth, Noah is about to discover something shocking.
That's not possible.
It's a 99.9% match, sir. It's him. There hasn't been a Deathwatch game since 2001, which would make Jack the reigning champion.
There's a record of his death in 2001, the Atwar suicide bombing.
His name has changed along with his face, his fingerprints, even the color of his eyes. He really didn't want the Bureau following him.
No, he wasn't hiding from them. He was hiding from us. You think he could have forged all those Ministry of Justice records himself? Look, he left the Marines in 2001, right when he was supposed to have died. The Ministry had a hand in this.
He works for justice?
As much as Jack works for anybody. He's an MOJ spy. He has been all along.
Jack then makes his way to the final area. As Noah is stressed out of his mind regarding Jack's true identity, a forgotten figure comes back into play.
No way! We follow the fucking rules. He's the star attraction. However we kill him by the book. It's what the audience expects. That's what they pay for.
Amala then realizes what the Death Watchers have been up to, however, and tells Jack what has been going on during his bike ride.
Bad news, Jack.
Is there any other kind these days?
Your cover's blown. The Death Watchers have been accessing the profile the Ministry set up.
So, we expected this.
Luckily, you've been doing well. They wouldn't just snuff out their highest-rated performer.
Jack tells Amala to look into it more and figure out even more details regarding the current Death Watch games.
Listen, I'm not gonna promise you the answers you want, but here's a little something for you to do in case you're bored. There's all sorts of shit set up for these games. Find out the story behind it.
We've made it all the way to the final level, the Strip. In an odd twist of fate, there is no boss fight for this level. It just ends. After making his way into the massive building in the middle of the area, Jack and Amala have another discussion about the predicament they find themselves in. Jack then proceeds to fight his way up the tower, a continuation of the previous level. After laying waste to even more enemies, Amala hurriedly contacts Jack to check up on his situation. But from what we've seen so far, Jack can handle himself just fine. He's a deadly figure after all, and someone that the Death Watcher—
Jack, so good to hear you're doing well.
Ah, Agent 13.
How'd he get on this channel?
Oh, we roots of evil love to spread our tendrils and mingle where we're not welcome. But Jack, hadn't you heard? The world has already gone mad. There is nothing left to burn. But I digress. Allow me to take my leave. Oh, and Miss Amala, look to Springvale for answers about the Death Watch facility.
Springvale? You mean the Springvale conglomerate?
Springvale. Don't they have a lot of pull in pharmaceuticals? Something about industry consolidation.
So long, Jack. Best of luck.
A mad world, huh? I'll fit right in.
With all of that said and done, after hundreds of thousands of contestants being killed by Jack, and after having a bounty placed on his head, and after realizing the Death Watch conspiracy theory runs deep, Jack finally makes it to the final area of the games, the Ring of Madness. Amala confirms that Springvale was indeed involved with the games, and she tells Jack that he has to get into game control and apprehend the men running this. This only leaves one figure remaining, the returning champion of Death Watch, the uncontrollable force of evil. The Black Baron? As the #1 contestant of Death Watch, Jack must fight and kill the Baron in order to achieve his goals. After giving the Black Baron an early grave by hitting him into a giant dartboard, Jack succeeds in his goal, and this nightmare is finally over.
And the Baron is history. Howard, this crowd has gone absolutely apeshit.
And who can blame them? These fireworks are a fitting end to an explosive evening of murder and mayhem. Outstanding performance from Jack. What do you think's next for him, Drees?
I don't know, a beer, some beaver, and a big fat steak.
Speaking of beaver, it's time for us to split. This is Howard Buckshot Holmes
and Chris Creeley
saying thanks to all the players, the viewers, and of course, our sponsor.
And we'll see you in hell.
Or is it?
Jack! I'm glad I made it in time. I saw you go into the tower, so I snuck in after you.
You snuck in?
What?
I'll give you credit. You ran a pretty good line of bullshit. But in the end, it smelled exactly like crap. You were the one who set all this up. You and your daddy's company. It's all about publicity, isn't it, Leo? What better way to get the word out about a killer virus than release it on an entire city? Funny coincidence your company makes the vaccine. Why, any self-respecting country would pay whatever you asked if the alternative was annihilation.
I want my lawyer. I've got nothing to say to you.
Not even one little thing? See, I was wondering, why Death Watch? If getting word out about the virus was the goal, why risk an uncontrolled element like the games?
Jack, you're here to arrest me, right? You better hurry or I'm gonna die on you.
I don't help people.
I know that was a lot, but I wanted to comprehensively cover the plot of the entire game, not just provide a basic synopsis you can easily find on Google.
I kill them.
Madworld is first and foremost an action game, and as such, it places a heavy emphasis on close quarters combat. You can't run away and fight from a distance in Madworld, instead, you'll be running straight into enemy territory to wreak havoc. Madworld is controlled with both the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, with the former being used for attacking and the latter being used for movement. The Nunchuck's joystick is used to control Jack, and by shaking the Nunchuck itself quickly, you can make him perform an evasive backflip to dodge enemy attacks. Pressing the C button will reset the camera, and holding it down will lock the camera onto an enemy. As the Wii never had a second stick on its controllers, there's no way to manually rotate the camera, so the only camera control you get in Madworld is just the reset. This is a bit annoying when you're in confined areas and surrounded by enemies, but overall, I don't think it's a big deal. The Z button lets you jump, and while Madworld isn't something like Devil May Cry, with that game's focus on air combos and juggling enemies, Madworld's jumps are primarily used for platforming and maneuvering around obstacles. If you want to lay the hurt on an enemy, run up to them and press the A button for a punch, and press it multiple times for a combo. If you press it repeatedly, you can destroy them in a simple yet effective finishing move. This is called an A finisher, as it's a finishing move that you perform with the A button. Holding down the A button lets you pick up objects which you can then use to keep attacking the enemy, resulting in a pretty wince-inducing moment.
Look at that asshole stagger!
These usually don't kill the enemy, however, so you have to pick them up and make use of the environment. Madworld features a lot of environmental finishes. From the classic rosebush to a grinder, Madworld has plenty of creative and gory ways for you to dispatch your enemies. But that's just the hand-to-hand combat. If you want to get even gorier, the B button is your best friend. If you hold down this button, Jack pulls out the chainsaw. Swinging the Wii Remote vertically gives you a vertical slice, and horizontally gives you a horizontal slice. As Madworld is set up like a game show, you get points for killing enemies, and you need a certain amount of points to reach the level's boss fight. The more creative and elaborate your kills, the more points you get, so while doing the same move over and over again will work in theory, you could get a lot more points and have more fun if you think outside the box and come up with something spectacular. The game's scoring system is fantastic, as not only does it thematically fit the game show aspect of the game's narrative, it also rewards you as the player for being creative. The game designers over at PlatinumGames put a lot of hard work into this part of the game, and it shows, because when your score goes up a lot for an elaborate kill you just pulled off, it feels great, as bad as that may sound ethically. Each level has both shared and unique environmental hazards that fit the location's aesthetic. The grimy subway and dilapidated streets of the starting area have a giant train that you can throw enemies into. The Asian-inspired map has a giant vat of boiling water that you can throw enemies into to make tempura out of them and then serve them. And the Gothic European castle has plenty of violent imagery that fits the area's haunting atmosphere. You'll also notice that at the start of every level, you'll see things that can be unlocked by meeting certain point requirements. Maybe you can unlock a new weapon for you to use before it breaks, or maybe a giant enemy will spawn around the map that when defeated grants you even more points. One of these point-related bonuses are the aforementioned bloodbath challenges. You can find either one or two of them throughout every level, and they're introduced in cutscenes by the charismatic Black Baron. He's a Deathwatch presenter with his role in the game being to explain the audience, and by extension the player, how to operate these challenges. As a narrative device, this fits right in with the whole violence is entertainment theme of the story, and as a game design decision, it's another smart move from Platinum. Having challenges like this helps to prevent the game from becoming extremely repetitive, as you can never predict what new challenge the game will throw at you in the coming levels. The first level's Bloodbath challenge is the Turbinator, which involves you having to pick up and throw groups of enemies into a giant jet engine. The more enemies that get sucked in at once, the more points you get. Looking back on this challenge, I realized that it's the game's way of teaching the player the importance of the motion controls. Having to pick up and throw enemies around is a major part of the game, so giving the player an environment where this specific action is the key to completing a challenge in the very first tutorial level is pretty clever. While Madworld does have a tutorial baked into the first level, this is the first instance where the game doesn't pause to specifically give you instructions. Instead, it puts you into a real combat situation and lets you figure it out for yourself. Another favourite of mine is the Death Press 2, which is found in the Mad Castle area of the game. You have to line up as many zombies as you can for them to be crushed by the giant hand of Frankenstein's monster. The more you can group together, the bloodier the result and the more points that you earn. When 5 enemies have been crushed, Frank's hand will start to run wild, crushing enemies very quickly for even more carnage. I can't cover every single Bloodbath challenge, but they're all really fun, and it's addicting trying to replay them to beat your previous high score, and you can even play them in multiplayer with a friend. Keeping up with the trend of going against the grain, every third level or so gets rid of having to run around the map on foot and instead places Jack on his trusty motorbike. These levels may seem gimmicky, but they're super awesome and a wonderful addition to the game. Jack's bike has a nice sense of weight to it, and while you can't freely steer in either direction, the handling and overall controls of these levels are perfect. Boosting in particular feels fantastic, and I can think of some actually dedicated racing games with boosting mechanics that don't feel as good as Madworld's. These levels also have dedicated Bloodbath challenges that involve you being on your bike, and these are just as good as the regular ones. If you swing the Wii Remote when an enemy jumps onto you, you can throw them off to their doom, and if you're suffocatingly close to one in a vehicle battle, Jack will pull out the chainsaw and do what he does best. If you're in an area like the Kojak boss fight where you can freely ride the bike in any direction you want, swinging the nunchuck does a 180 move, which is both an attack and a way for you to change direction, and swinging the Wii Remote makes you do a 360 attack, which keeps you moving in the same direction. Speaking of boss fights, let's dive into the gameplay surrounding them. I spoke about the boss's relevance to the narrative in the previous section, so let's analyze their gameplay. Like any boss fight in an action game, Madworld's bosses are unique enemies with one-of-a-kind moves and strategies. They start off pretty simple, but they get more challenging and thoughtful the more you progress through the game. Little Eddie is the first boss, and as such, he serves as an introductory boss fight to familiarize the player with dodging big attacks, striking targets, and performing the game's QuickTime events. Madworld is filled to the brim with these, but we'll get to them in a bit. Other bosses like Jude the Dude specialize in ranged attacks and quick movement, teaching the player to utilize the lock-on function to keep track of an enemy's position as they quickly zip around the arena. Reen loves to block your attacks and constantly defend, so unlike Little Eddie, you have to wait and time your attacks for when she's vulnerable. You can also pick up objects and throw them at Reen for extra damage, teaching the player to search for things in the environment that they can use in a fight. I could go on and on and on and on about the different strategies needed for the boss fights, but the bottom line is that each of them are unique, entertaining, and challenging, which is essential for a good action game. Going back to QuickTime events, Madworld makes extensive use of these for its finishing moves. Want to ruin your enemy's plans? Quickly swing both the Wii Remote and the nunchuck to the side. Want to make them wish they stayed in bed? Swing the Wii Remote downwards. Want to make them wish they were never born? Then swing the Wii Remote round and round like a record. Madworld has some totally gruesome finishes you can perform, and the viler they are, the more the commentators love it.
Once they start to stumble like that, you can do any fucked up thing you want to them.
Oh, same principle as roofies.
You're a sick puppy.
Madworld is also a heavy-feeling game. When compared to other PlatinumGames titles like Bayonetta, with that game's fast movement and emphasis on air combos, Madworld feels more grounded, literally. Jack is a burly, heavy kind of guy, and he isn't going to start jumping into the air to perform an air combo. The grounded nature of the combat adds some realism to the wacky setting the game takes place in, and it's very fun to engage in, even if you are brutalizing every punk that stands in your way.
Hell yeah, pimps and players. The Black Baron is here to learn y'all a little something in the methods of mayhem. All you got to do.
Madworld was developed by the then newly founded studio PlatinumGames, which was made up of former Capcom all-stars like Hideki Kamiya, Atsushi Inaba, and Shinji Mikami, as well as others. As the Wii was taking the world by storm during this time in the early 2000s, the developers of Platinum wanted to make something fun and attractive for the system, but the catch was that it had to have a high level of violence due to mature-rated Wii games being very rare. To prepare for Madworld's development, Inaba played Rockstar Games' Manhunt 2, a heavily violent game that also released on the Wii. When discussing that game in issue 231, page 34 of Nintendo Power, Inaba stated,
"Extravagance is really necessary to fall on the right side of that line. We don't want this game to be dark and serious. One of the games that I played to better understand what constitutes serious violence was Manhunt 2, and although I personally like that type of game, when violence is portrayed so simply, that's when it becomes more serious and dark. When it's over the top and extravagant, it feels much more acceptable. That over the top expression is what makes it funny. That's why people laugh when they see the violence in this game. It's not realistic. Nothing like this would ever happen in real life, which is what games should be offering to the audience."
Even though Madworld was developed by a Japanese team, Platinum designed it with Western audiences in mind, which explains why the violence is so chaotic. After showing the game's developers a clip of Jack impaling an enemy through the skull with a signpost, Madworld director Shigenori Nishikawa wrote on the Platinum Games blog,
"In truth, the reaction to the signpost from the team was awful. Everyone thought it was mean-spirited and left a bad taste in their mouth. However, I think that was just the standard Japanese reaction to things. When foreigners saw it, they laughed out loud. Their completely opposite reaction, that over-the-top brutality equals laughs, was the moment I realised that people, countries and cultures are truly different. So it would be pointless for my Japanese team to suddenly declare, we are going to make a game that makes Westerners laugh. What I did think was that we could make what had already gotten laughs from the focal point and begin to imagine what else might get laughs, so that's what I told the team to do."
With this, it's clear to see that the focal point of Madworld was to not only create a violent game, but to make the violence funny. As for the game's striking black and white art style, this too proved to be a challenge. Masaki Yamanaka, the lead character designer and art director of Madworld, stated,
"The first concept we started out with from an art design standpoint was creating graphics that would enforce that the player would not feel guilty for the brutal things that happened in the game, but instead would be able to have fun and laugh. However, for me as a designer, my goal was to create art that would make you stop the page if you saw it in a magazine, or click a link if you saw it on the web. It was to make art that instantly caught your eye and stayed with you."
Madworld was made to not only be visually striking but also easy to play. Nishikawa also stated in Nintendo Power that he wanted to forego item collection and puzzle solving to make the game easier to play in short bursts. Going back to Yamanaka, his philosophy for Madworld's art direction was, an artist could have sketched this. In other words, the game's visuals had to look authentic without relying heavily on obvious CGI. It had to look like a comic book. Madworld's art assets were created in Autodesk's soft image, and the game runs on a custom-made engine designed around the Wii's specific hardware limitations. According to Volume 32, Number 6 of the Computer Graphics World article, It's a Mad World.
The game sets are completely modeled with complex lighting features, but only normal maps are used to draw the game, avoiding the high processing costs of light maps or layered textures. This allowed the game's artists to have finer control of visibility and colour balance in the game. Though the developers attempted to add reflection mapping into the game, they found it did not fit well with the comic book style and dropped it. Explosions and other effects, normally created in other games using particle effects to achieve a factor of realism, were modelled with particles in Madworld, but using specially designed images to retain the comic book style.
Lots of work and planning went into the art of Madworld, and it shows. As for the narrative, Yasumi Matsuno published an article on IGN on March 4th, 2009 detailing his work on the game.
Jack is not a righteous person. This is because he has no hesitation in regards to his violence. Violence is accepted in the world. This was from the same reasoning as the first point. During gameplay, they did not want players to doubt their action when performing an extreme act of violence. On the other hand, the producer believed that violence should ultimately be denied in the end. It meant that we had to be concerned about the current circumstance surrounding the video game industry. I thought it was quite a reasonable request because, as a company, both Sega and PlatinumGames did not consider violence right. The setting of Deathwatch, an illegal, underground live show, came from these two contradictory orders: the acceptance and negation of violence. In the extraordinary world of the Deathwatch games, violence and brutality is not only required, but accepted. However, once you step out of the show, the world outside is ruled by normal conventions.
The juxtaposition between violence and non-violence is a major theme of the game, and Matsuno's idea of highlighting this elevates the game to another level. Madworld could have been a silly romp with little to no thought behind a story, but Matsuno brings the game one step further to greatness. With all of that said and done, Platinum ran into yet another problem. Nishikawa stated on the Platinum blog,
I began to wonder, there has to be a way to make this more over the top and comical.
His way of achieving this was by having a Japanese manzai style of comedy within the game itself, where two commentators would comment on the players' actions to try and make them laugh.
Once the recording was done, we put the data into a development build of the game and presented this version of the game containing Jack's gruesome kills with the announcers talking over the action to the staff of Sega of America with a bit of trepidation. They watched the actions of Jack on screen along with the announcers talking away, and everyone busted up laughing. They are laughing, the announcers work.
Madworld's announcers are voiced by Greg Proops and John DiMaggio, two legendary figures who aren't pulling any punches in the game. According to an IGN article titled Madworld Month, the commentators, both Proops and DiMaggio, reveal that the game's voice director Jack Fletcher contacted them both to work on the game. Proops and DiMaggio were thrilled to be a part of Madworld as they had worked together on voice acting roles in the past, and when they were given the green light to ad-lib commentary with little to no filter placed on them, they ran wild. With that, PlatinumGames had nailed the gameplay, visuals, controls, and commentary, but there was still one thing that they had to consider. There are two unique elements to Madworld's audio that stick out to me the most, the soundtrack and the commentary, so let's begin with the former. While most action games go for a sort of rock-inspired soundtrack, Madworld flipped this notion on its head and went for a full-blown rap industrial soundtrack. Featuring 20 songs from super underground American hip-hop artists, the game's soundtrack has music to fit every one of its scenes. Composed and produced by PlatinumGames' in-house producer Naoto Tanaka, who created the music for the Mega Man X and Ace Attorney series of games under the alias Akemi Kimura, Madworld's unique vision of industrial hip-hop is truly a breath of fresh air, and I honestly haven't heard any other game that sounds like it. According to an interview with Tanaka by Original Sound Version,
I tried to write an American-style music and tried to avoid a true Japanese style. An example of this is in the Japan stage. I am Japanese, and for this track, I could have gone with a true Japanese approach with my understanding of traditional Japanese music. However, I chose to go with a stereotypical Japanese image that matches what people in the West think of Japan, rather than what I believe it really is.
One of the lead rappers in the game is Ox, or Stolen Drums as he goes by now. I got in contact with Ox regarding an interview for this video, and while he did reply positively at first, he never replied to my subsequent emails, so my plans fell through unfortunately. In this same interview, Tanaka describes how,
I remember that time when Ox visited the PlatinumGames office and I asked him to listen to some of my unfinished game tracks. He gave us advice on how to successfully create mashups between hip-hop and rock music. His words were very encouraging, and we came to believe that our approach would be welcomed by gamers. I also had the pleasure of watching him rap, which was a great experience that taught me a lot about making hip-hop music.
Ox performed 10 of the 20 tracks in Madworld, and he's listed as the producer on Soul, the final track of the soundtrack CD. It seems that without Ox being a part of the game's soundtrack and giving Tanaka hip-hop production advice, Madworld's music could have been completely different. Tanaka also stated that
the hip-hop concept was actually motivated by the game's producer, Inaba-san. Because we knew early on that we wanted this style, we were able to head straight in that direction right from the beginning. We felt that hip-hop and rap were modern and cool, and would work great in the game. Speaking of musical genre, however, to create moods that suited particular parts in the game, we realized we couldn't use only hip-hop music and decided to add in a mixture of rap and rock. For example, the boss battle music was inspired by the Linkin Park and Jay-Z album, which we felt was really pioneering a new, hip style of music.
Tanaka is of course talking about the famous Collision Course, a collaborative EP by Linkin Park and Jay-Z released in 2004. Digital audio workstations such as Cubase SX and Acid were used by Tanaka to create the beats, or backing tracks as he calls it, before the rappers would contribute their vocals. The music was also created to match the areas that Jack travels to. The city streets sound distorted and aggressive, the Asian-inspired locales sound stereotypically oriental, the gothic castle has a horrorcore sound, etc. Tanaka's attention to detail with the soundtrack goes a long way in adding to the game's likability, and ensures that the rappers in the game have varied subject matter depending on the beat that they were given. Speaking of rappers, I mentioned before that I got in contact with Sick YG about his work on the game, so how exactly did he get involved with Madworld?
How did I get involved with the soundtrack, the Madworld soundtrack? Well, I was signed to the #1 radio station in Japan, Inter FM, Joint 1 Radio, you know what I'm saying? And the music was getting, my music that I was sending out there was getting a buzz, more and more, and which is, why they even had the interest to even sign me in the beginning. And, so they had the rights to, shop me as an artist. They got the deal with Madworld, and Naota, Tanaka, and all them that put it all together. Once they heard what I can do, man, they fell in love with it. So at first it just started off with one song, and then they hit me back and was like, hey, they want to do multiple songs with you, and that's how you got the songs that you got on Madworld. How did I go about writing the lyrics to the Madworld songs that I did? Well, so each song has a different place in the game. They already had their vision of what type of songs they wanted to place, periodically throughout the game. So they had not really a script, but a narrative for each scene. And so they gave the narrative, and they were, they gave the direction, like, hey, this is what we would like to talk about in this scene, if you could do that. And I had 100% writer, creative control, writer freedom, all that. The only thing is I had to stick to the narrative of the scene. And they had some cuss words that you could use. You couldn't be too vulgar, and it was certain subject matter that you couldn't use. So that was the only restrictions that I had. But other than that, I had full creative control to do what I wanted to do. Sent in all the original verses. Didn't ever get a call back like, hey, can you change this here? Can you change that there? They loved each and every one. So, yeah, that's how we went about getting the subject matter for Madworld.
Moving on to the commentary, while I did mention the commentators before, I'll go into more detail here. As you play the game, they'll comment on whatever you just did before making an incredibly crass and inappropriate comment.
Careful, Jack. That engine will suck you harder than my wife sucks the pizza delivery guy.
Jack better mind the vortex. He could be sucked to his death if he's not careful.
Generally not a bad way to go, but in this case, it's something to avoid.
This style of humor isn't for everyone, I understand, but thematically, it's excellent. Deathwatch is supposed to shock and offend, so it makes sense that the commentators they hire will push the boundaries of good taste as they talk about what's going on. The idea of having commentators talking over your violent actions for comedic effect and to display how truly mad the world has become is brilliant. Sure, the commentators are extremely juvenile, but I can't help but laugh at their dumb comments.
And here comes the pain train.
You know how in India it's common for people to ride on the outsides of trains?
Sure.
These aren't popular over there. You know, a cockroach can live for a week without its head.
Big deal. I went through 8 years of marriage without any head.
When those wankers wobble, they're sitting ducks for any shit you want to pull on them.
Could you write I huff hobo chode on their foreheads with lipstick?
You could, but it wouldn't help you win Death Watch.
To light up the night, all you got to do is toss a motherfucker into a tube. Then it's only a matter of time before that ass gets tapped and kabloo.
After a long and strenuous development period, Madworld was finally released in early 2009. The game's graphic violence had it banned in Germany and heavily delayed in Japan, so Madworld unfortunately could not be enjoyed the world over on launch by action game fans in these countries. However, the game launched to critical acclaim, boasting 9 out of 10 scores from outlets such as Game Informer, IGN, Nintendo Power, and more. Today, the game has an 81 on Metacritic, meaning the average review score was an 8.1 out of 10, so pretty good. The game's unique visual style, catchy soundtrack, and simple yet effective combat system were all praised, but Madworld's control scheme, camera, and short length were criticized by some. While the game reviewed very well, unfortunately in the long run, the sales figures for Madworld were abysmal. In a VentureBeat interview, Vice President of Marketing for Sega of America Sean Ratcliffe was asked,
Sega is also going after the core audience with games like House of the Dead Overkill and Madworld. How are consumers responding to those mature rated titles?
House of the Dead has done very well, and has absolutely met our expectations. The first set of data for Madworld is very encouraging as well.
Unfortunately for Ratcliffe, Madworld did not resonate with audiences on launch. According to a report published by Gamasutra on April 17, 2009, Madworld only sold 66,000 copies in its first month in America. This may not sound that bad, but in another report by Joystick, it was said that
analytics firm OTX Research seems to be already making a name for itself after announcing intentions last month to track game sales. Speaking at the LA Games conference, OTX's Nick Williams explained the surprisingly weak connection between strong online awareness of a game versus actual, hard sales numbers, citing Sega's recently released Madworld as a striking example. Noting the game's top position among IGN.com's games with the highest level of unique interest. Madworld came in at a paltry number 41 using OTX's game plan metric, a system that measures 1,000 gamers on a weekly basis, tracking 400 games at a given time. This translates to a bleak 8% of Wii owners having even heard of the title, much less purchasing it. That's 0.32% according to April's Madworld sales data, compared to the 20 million Wii owners in the US currently.
The purpose of this research was to determine if online hype for a video game translated into strong sales figures when it eventually released, and the sales of Madworld were so poor to the point where the OTX research firm found their answer: no. In Japan, the game did even worse. Due to Madworld's hyper-violence and depressing setting, most Japanese gamers were turned away from it, and as such, the game charted at 33 on Japanese sales charts, and it only sold around 3,000 units in the first week. Ouch. Sega wasn't fazed by this, however, as while Madworld and fellow hardcore Wii game The House of the Dead Overkill sold poorly, GamesIndustry.biz reported on June 30th, 2009 that Sega wasn't taking their hat out of the ring and that they would commit to publishing more mature-rated games for the Wii. However, less than a year later, on January 10th, 2010, former Sega of America studio director Konstantin Hansdopoulos stated,
"So look at Dead Space, we were stunned. That was my litmus test. Basically, it's like, okay, you got EA, who can put all the marketing muscle behind this, an established franchise that scored quite well on the 360 and the PS3. They should be able to actually hit this out of the park, right? We get numbers, real numbers, aside from an MPD, and I'm like, whoa."
Hope wasn't lost, however, as the very next day on January 11th, it was reported that Madworld's director, Shigenori Nishikawa, said that he would personally like to make a sequel. Against all the odds, this somehow came true with Anarchy Reigns, an online multiplayer-focused brawler that takes place in the Madworld universe. Anarchy Reigns saw the return of Jack, the Black Baron, Matilda, and even more characters, but this game sold even worse than Madworld, essentially killing the series forever. On March 10th, 2020, lead artist Masaki Yamanaka returned to the Madworld universe to create some brand new artwork of Jack to celebrate the game's 11th anniversary. And that's where we are now. With all that said and done, we've finally reached the end of this breakdown. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. It's a major shame that after all that time and money poured into the project, Madworld failed commercially. I feel horrible for the team over at Platinum who spent years of their lives making such a unique and beautiful experience. But some of the best games ever made are the ones that don't sell very well, I suppose. I spent hours researching, writing, collecting footage, conducting interviews, and more for the purpose of this video. Madworld is a game I first played when I was a kid, way too young to be playing it, but its unforgettable qualities will forever make it hold a special place in my heart. If you haven't played Madworld, then I recommend you do so by playing it on actual hardware or via emulation if you can. It's a wonderful piece of art that has to be seen and played to be believed. Thank you very much again for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's evident in the movement that he steps with a monster has arrived. The kid on some next shit, benevolent with the flow, beyond weapons, the style, beyond ripping the hearts for rhymes kept in shit. So he can't fade out. There's too much ground to stake to let the beat play out. It's like time stops. What will he say now? What can you move when they try and put what he say down? See, that's the discipline. I push mute on these actors and go hard so these little disputes ain't a factor. I gotta get my name up in the rafters and make it so only real shit is coming right after. Let's go. Lord help me save my soul. I'm trying not to lose control. I'm trying not to lose control, but I might have to let go. So Lord help me save my soul. I'm trying not to lose control. I'm trying not to lose control, but I might have to let go. I'm trying to find my position in time to get it poppin' before I'm out of my mind. See, I be